Hi everybody. Talking about non-duality is kind of like an oxymoron, because the best way to communicate non-duality is actually just in silence. And that's why it's known with the old Zen masters it used to just be this, because it is what is. It's any movement, a stillness, experiencing movement, movement of form, movement of mind, movement of energy, emotion, feeling, the elements. And what we are at our essence is untouched by all movement. We are the screen on which the worldly theatre takes place. But at the same time, it's seeing things consciously, allowing ourselves to be totally, fully human, with all our foibles. And the fun in that is that the more we become, when it's realized that we're nothing, and that there's just nothing and everything, that any idea of perfection is abandoned, and then you can just be the human that you are. A bit crazy, a bit weird, and essentially, as the human body is a collection of DNA and up-to-date conditioning. So to explain that, the DNA is obviously DNA that the body has received from ancestral lines. That's why we have the nose we have, the ears we have, the face we have. It's given to us from our ancestors. And in that, the genetics goes far deeper, because as they've seen in science, the certain traumas and fears can be passed through DNA as well. And then we have our worldly experience, which has given us a conditioning if we're brought up in a loving family or an unloving family, in poverty or in wealth, educated, not educated. All these factors also mold the way a particular human will behave and act. So as we see the innocence of all of this, because from the stillness from our eternal self, it is seen that as much as a plant grows, whether it's in sunlight or in shade, every human being has grown in the way that they've grown. They weren't in control of their DNA, and they weren't in control of their conditioning. These happened. So funnily enough, the more we just allow ourselves to be fully human, let the body burp, fart, make noises without guilt or shame, because it's just bodily function, the more we see that we're quite ordinary. We're just another human amongst 8 billion humans. Things calm down. The self, or we could call it the false self, is in a perpetual comparison which creates a lot of discomfort, because it's always trying to obtain things. So if I look good, then I might attract a partner, I might get that job which will get me money, so that I can have essentially what all humans are looking for is love, security, and the feeling of wholeness, which is what I would call God. And if you observe and see that the body just moves, like this hand just moves, there isn't a clear deciphered instruction, there's just movement that happens. And the more that you become aware of the natural movement and the natural happening, in a way there's a letting go of the idea of importance. I was going to say responsibility, but that would be misconstrued. We can still take responsibility for our life, because non-duality really is starting to see the paradox in everything, that because there is and there isn't simultaneously. So stillness allows all conditioned movement and DNA to be witnessed, to be seen for what it is, not trying to change it, not trying to make it better, just seeing that this is the way this body, mind is functioning. We speak a certain language, we say certain words. So again, the false self is always trying to judge if it's a good or bad person. So certain words are put in categories of or bad, and I shouldn't say these. And even with organized religion, all this talk about blasphemy, as if we shouldn't say certain words. Well, there's no freedom if we remove words. Freedom of speech means the freedom of every word. So liberation, which is probably a more appropriate term than awakening or enlightenment, is seeing the absolute freedom that this human being is the way it is, and it's okay, and it can just be the way it is. And some will like it and some won't. And so what? Those that will be your friends, partner, will naturally be attracted to you because you are the way you are, and those that are not, they will fall away quite easily. As long as we're in the false self, because of its fear of not having love and not having security, there's in a way a constant manipulation to behave a certain way, to be perceived a certain way by others, so that we can fit in and be loved and feel secure in a group. So on the pathless path of spirituality, you can find yourself having lost all friends. And that can be worrying, but the stillness is God. You're with God at all times. And the more it is seen that the stillness is what we are, the more the noise is just seen as noise, whether it's external noise, internal noise. There's always peace. And that's essentially what we're also talking about, because one has to understand what we're seeking. Happiness, for example, this search for happiness. Happiness is a momentary emotion. It rises and it falls. Sadness is a momentary emotion, rises and falls. The stillness that we are is also known as inner peace, is eternal, constant. It is the screen on which everything moves. So when we are identified with the false self, there's the false conclusion that we are the moving. We are this body moving in time and space. Unsafe, small in the world, seeking love and protection. When focus is placed on this enough, so that all false perception or conclusions, beliefs can fall away, that stillness can it is then seen that the stillness is not a thing that we have, it is what we are. We are stillness. This is impossible to talk about, so I can only try. There isn't a person that becomes the stillness. We are already stillness. So it's just seeing that there's movement. No need to judge it, categorize it. And suffering comes out of the delta between what is and what the mind thinks should be. And that's a very profound statement that goes far deeper than we may perceive on a first hearing or a first interpretation, because it's in every layer of life. So in this moment, however life is appearing, is it. Whether we have money or don't have money, whether we are healthy or unhealthy, whether we have a home or we're homeless, whether we like the home or we would prefer a bigger home, whether we have any possession or not possessions, until there is an absolute okayness with this being it, a complete acceptance without it needing to accept, just yes, or it's obvious, it's so obvious. And it can also happen that after self-realization, when there's an the energetic shift or release, and there is no more false self, suffering can continue because old habits and patterns will persist until they basically die out. In a way, this is the clinging to hope and desire, and it's why the Buddha communicated about attachments and desires and letting go of them, but also clarified to the idea of letting go of attachment and desire to the best of our ability. Because if we go too far, then you will become detached from life itself and from enjoying life, from also from what is. So it's coming into a balance, a balanced perspective, until eventually there is no balancing. It just is. And sometimes it can be a painful path until that is energetically experienced. Maybe sometimes enough suffering has to be experienced until there's just a feeling of enough. So it can be quite natural to want to have certain things, but it's coming into balance with the understanding of it would be nice to have a partner, a car, some money, compared to the difference between I have to have it or I feel like shit. So coming to a balance and seeing, because every human being is capable of obtaining all material possessions, but in order to obtain them, are you willing to do what is necessary to get there? And that's for each person to decide for themselves. Maybe, maybe not. It's not important spiritually, whether you do or you don't. You're free to do whatever you want. So it's more seeing that sometimes we want life to be a different way than what it is, and that will create suffering. But there isn't actually preparedness to do what's necessary. So then it's just going to be outside of ourselves in a continuous wheel of suffering. So it's becoming very realistic with yourself. Funny thing about this whole thing that we call life is that we're born without an instruction manual. And it's funny, in today's society, everybody seems to have a manual. You should do this and you shouldn't do that. Know thyself. And that is profound in so many ways. Not only know thyself as emptiness and as wholeness, as in liberation, self-realization, awakening, but also know this particular body-mind, that it has a DNA, it has a conditioning, so it will like coffee instead of tea, or it might be a vegetarian, or it might support a football team. But it's just seen as being a light play of life and not our intrinsic identity. So, for example, many years ago when the shift occurred, for years, because I used to play ice hockey, so for years after the shift I would watch an ice hockey game and I could no longer see two teams playing. I just saw a bunch of men skating around on a rink. Before I could remember that, I used to see them against us, and there was a wanting for this team to beat this team, and all of a sudden it just became a play of movement. And something that may be overlooked in non-duality is that some people focus so much on the idea of letting go of ego. And for me that's just dangerous, because it is more seeing what is this and letting, you could say, the leaves of the tree, everything that is not what you are will just naturally fall away, and it falls away. The idea of ego creates a potential psychosis where there starts to be a rejection of our self. And one thing that is pretty obvious is that as we're going through what we could call a spiritual journey, we are faced and confronted with truths that definitely do not conform with society. Society is seen for what it is, that there is no actual society, there are no relationships, there are no people, but people will cling on to their long-held concepts and want you to adhere to them. And as you're going through a dissolution of all of your old thoughts and beliefs, it will quite often create certain conflicts with, whether it be family members or friends, and some will fall away on the path. It can be quite disconcerting because we want to love everybody. The way I've experienced it is that there's love here for everybody, but it's just quite obvious that not everybody can love this. If they're identified in a story of a separate self, they will tend to push away what feels uncomfortable. And this has no more control in the way life plays out. It's generally just surprising when if there's a particular reaction from somebody. Also surprised at what words can come out of my mouth, because it's just completely uncontrolled and unbridled. It just flows as it flows. Rumi wrote, he who led you this far will not lead you astray. And that has been clearly true for me from throughout this entire experience. It's faith in God. So yeah, the more you become, you can see in a transparent way that there's no way that this being could be any other way. The more relaxed this is with others. There's not trying to, not only is a person not seen, there's just that the body moving, but there's just no judgment on it. It just moves how it moves. And I'm only really made aware of that apparently it's different to the norm when I see other people gossiping about other humans or telling stories about them or getting really angry with them and saying I don't like that person. All these things just don't exist from a place of nothingness. Essentially, there'll either be talking will happen to a particular person or not. It doesn't have to like or dislike anything. Moves towards things it's, you could say, comfortable with or attracted to energetically, or that where there's an openness, and where there's not. There's just no movement. And occasionally you might come across somebody who's aggressive, and this body will tend to just move away. Very simply and effortlessly. So, I hope you can see yourselves as being the innocence that you are. Peace and love.